Brayan Bello just got paid. Why is that important to the Red Sox, and why is it important to Red Sox fans? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin. In case you missed it yesterday, Brayan Bello got a big old payday. If you want a full breakdown of what the contract looked like, the value in years and stuff like that, take a look at this video right here that's going to be popping up on screen right now. Click that link and head over to see that. But what we're looking at today is what the importance of this looks like. Why is it that the Red Sox decided to lock up Brayan Bello when they still had so many years of control over him? Why is it important to the overall landscape of the Boston Red Sox, and why should fans be excited about this signing? We're taking a look at all of those questions today and breaking down what the effects of this Brayan Bello contract could be, why it's undisputably a positive for both fans and the organization. But before we get into that, we are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. We are less than 250 subs away at this point, so help us get there by hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. We talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Really does help these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. Yes, this is just one player. Yes, this is just one contract. And no, this contract alone is not going to be the difference between the Red Sox being World Series contenders and finishing under 500 in the year 2024. But that doesn't mean that this contract isn't going to have a ton of residual positive effects on the organization itself and from a fan perspective as well. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is because it's starting to show a bit of direction for where the Red Sox are headed. Basically, since Craig Breslow took over, and realistically, even before that, especially from a Red Sox ownership point of view, the emphasis is being put on being able to build out this young core into a championship contender, right? They want to build from within. That's been their reasoning for not spending the way that we've been wanting them to spend this entire offseason. But up until this point, it was really hard for us to trust that they would actually be able to do that because we just watched them dismantle a previous young core that was unbelievably successful, right? There's only one singular player from that 2018 Boston Red Sox team that's still with the club today. We just watched them dismantle the most winning team in franchise history. On top of that, as fans, how are we supposed to believe that they were going to be able to secure this young core? Because obviously building the young core is great, but you need to be able to ensure that they're going to be around for a while and play with each other for a long period of time. If you want a successful young core, you have to be able to keep them. They really have only done that one singular time since 2011. Since 2011, the Red Sox have extended just one singular player before 3 years of service time, and that was Garrett Whitlock 2 years ago. What this contract does is it gives validity to what the Red Sox are trying to do. It shows that they are actually going to try and execute this plan, and they're not just talking to talk. They're actually walking the walk a little bit, and that, from a fan perspective and from an internal organization perspective, is a really fantastic thing to happen. Another reason why this signing is so important is because it could possibly create a domino effect within the organization itself. The hardest step is always the first, and now that they have a basis on which to build on, it may be a bit easier to start locking up other talent. Now, this isn't to say that every single young player who shows some level of impact at the big league level is going to be signed immediately to a long-term deal, and all of a sudden the Red Sox are going to have 7 or 8 contracts here that are just like Brayan Bello's. But I do think it makes it a bit easier to get to 1 or 2 more of these deals as you start to grow out the young core of this team, because what it does is it gives you a basis to work on. Now you can go up to a Tanner Houck, who's been mentioned in contract talks lately, or Tristan Casas, who's been mentioned in contract talks lately, and is a guy who you would need to lock up if this is your plan going forward, and say, look, this is what we were giving Brayan Bello. This is what we think you're worth. You now have a basis to work on it, and you've got a little bit of a bigger selling point, right? You can go up to Tristan Casas or Tanner Houck or whoever else is on this team that you're looking to have here for the long term and say, look, we've got Rafael Devers for the next 9 years. We've got Brayan Bello for the next possibly 7 years. We've got Garrett Whitlock for possibly another 5 to add on to the free agency additions of Masataka Yoshida and Trevor Story. This is what we're trying to build. This is how we've been executing it, and this is how we want you to join in with this vision, with this plan. again, it's a lot easier to sell someone on the idea that you are going to build around them if you've already started doing that, right? Rafael Devers, you needed $300 million to get done. Brayan Bello, you needed almost $75 million to get done, right? You need to be able to spend that money, and being able to show that and have a basis from which you are trying to build is obviously extremely important. I also think from a fan base and really from a player perspective as well, this shows a little bit that ownership is willing to invest in their product. Now, no, I'm not saying that re-signing Brayan Bello and getting him locked up for 7 years completely negates everything that they neglected to do this offseason. I'm not saying that at all, but I think from a fan base perspective, inarguably, this is a net positive, something we needed desperately, a breath of fresh air, right? Because this entire offseason, we have been absolutely drowning in negativity. You've had the full throttle comments that didn't come true. You had the whole saga with Yamamoto. Did they actually offer him $300 million? You had all the talk about them trying to shed salary to sign guys like Teoscar or Jorge Soler, lowballing free agents. You had budget issues, right? There were so many things this offseason, lies from the FSG straight to your face, calling you a liar if you disprove of what the team is doing. And in getting news like this, getting a extension on a young, talented player and seeing them start to build towards this vision, at least in small increments, is always a net positive. And I think that's something, again, we really needed. It's nice to come up for a breath of fresh air. And it's not just the fans that are going to be impacted by this sort of, hey, maybe ownership is willing to invest at some point. I also think this is going to impact the players as well, specifically the young players on this team, either coming up in the organization or who are already here, right? Because they're looking at it and they're like, okay, yeah, this is great that my boy Bello is now a paid man. He is secured for the next 7 years. But I think what this also means is that if they can also cement themselves as a legitimate, immovable piece of the Red Sox future, they could get deals like this as well. And I think that's a huge motivator to be a better player overall going into the next couple of years. Guys like we just mentioned, Casas, Houck, Duran, Rafaela, Wilyer Abreu coming up, Teal, Meyer, Anthony, seeing all of these guys come up and being able to actually articulate and give a cemented reasoning as to what they could get if they perform the way that they should perform is always a fantastic thing. And again, money is a fantastic motivator. If the Red Sox are showing that they're willing to pay you if you do well in just a couple of years at the big league level to ensure that you're here for a long time, that's going to motivate guys to play. And then obviously there's the financial impacts of this as well, right? Because this contract isn't going to only affect how much you're spending on Bello, it's going to affect how much you're spending on the rest of the team, which obviously it appears as though going forward in the future, the Red Sox will have set parameters on what this team's budget will look like. Getting Brayan Bello locked up and understanding that he is a constant through his entire arbitration years is turning a cost variable into a cost constant, which allows the Red Sox to understand exactly how much you're paying this guy and being able to add around him. If Brayan Bello turns into the pitcher that we all kind of expect him to turn into, maybe not an ace, but a number 1 or a number 2 within Major League Baseball, this contract's an absolute steal. In 2027, you're going to be paying Brayan Bello $8.5 million. If he is a true number 1, number 2, a top 20 pitcher in Major League Baseball, that is an absolute steal for the Boston Red Sox, and they are going to have a ton of opportunity to build around him and make sure that your ace, the number 1 pitcher on your staff, is able to pitch with a full secure rotation. I think that's going to be extremely important from the financial side of things. But even if Brayan Bello doesn't end up ascending to the pitcher we want him to become, and he stays around this 3 or 4 type pitcher, maybe his peak is like a 3.95 ERA at some point, say that same number in 2027, if Brayan Bello is still a number 3 or 4 pitcher, paying him $9.5 million is still an absolute good value for the Boston Red Sox. So when you're looking at this financially, the contract itself, I don't think there's a reason for this contract to go south financially. I think even if Brayan Bello stays exactly the same as he is now, this contract is absolutely worth it. And then obviously if he gets better, it's an absolute steal. But what this does in terms of the organization as a whole, it gives you a constant variable in your rotation over the next few years. There are so many variables with this rotation, and allowing yourself to create a constant out of those variables helps you sort of start to put the pieces together as to what this rotation is going to look like for the next few years. Now, there is one thing that I think is slightly not a positive about this contract, but I don't think was the main goal of this contract, and that is that technically speaking, the Red Sox signing Brayan Bello and using some of that budget money that they were allotted this season is not going to make the 2024 team better, right? It's not going to improve their chances of winning a World Series, and that is a bit of a talking point, because would you rather have them extend Bello now or wait and try and get someone within this budget that's going to increase the odds that the Red Sox make the playoffs in 2024? That's definitely a bit of a debate, but in my opinion, that's not the goal of this contract. The goal of this contract is not to win now, it's to ensure that you are in a better place to win and a more financially sound place to win in the next 6 or 7 years, and I think they absolutely achieved that. Brayan Bello is probably the brightest young star in terms of pitching the Red Sox have had since, what, Clay Buchholz maybe, right? He's going to be someone special, and getting him locked up for the price that they did, in my opinion, is absolutely worth it, but again, that is a debate to be had. Overall, again, when we're looking at what this contract could mean for the Red Sox, I think it's inarguably a positive on both sides. I've seen some comments saying, well, what if he sucks? Well, the value of this contract is correlated to the fact that he could be a number 4 or a number 5, just a solid innings eating pitcher, and this contract still be worth it, which I really don't think is going to happen, but it's set up that way if it does. And then I've seen comments that say, well, what if he's good and gets paid less than he's actually valued and he ends up bitter with the organization? Well, there are incentives built in here, Cy Young vote incentives, All-Star game incentives, and the money is increasing exponentially every year that he's playing, so the value will be there if he's a good pitcher, and I just think there's really no way to debate this. Every other move that the Red Sox have made this offseason rightfully is debated whether or not it's good or bad. I don't think you can do this with the Brayan Bello contract, not only because the deal itself is really sound from both sides of the equation, but also because it indicates so much about what the Red Sox could be trying to do here over the next coming years. Now, obviously, they need to actually step up and do that, take those next steps, but we're finally getting a step in the right direction. You are taking a step forward as opposed to all the steps backwards it felt like they have taken this entire offseason. This is a legitimate step forward, and I think that is an incredible thing to see. And honestly, I absolutely love this deal. If you couldn't tell, right? I'm basically gushing about it. So let me know in the comment section down below, what do you think? Is there anything within this contract that's sort of crushing you a bit, that's like, yeah, it's all positives, but, or are you with me where it's like, man, this really looks like it's just a genuine positive for all sides here? Let me know all your thoughts on what you think the impact of Brayan Bello's contract could actually be. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, like I said, we were on the road to 10,000 subscribers. So if you made it to the end here, you might as well help us get there by hitting that subscribe button. Also, make sure you guys hit that like button as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.